Alright, so it has been a long week of anticipating, waiting, but finally we have the second episode of Season 8, the final season of Game of Thrones last night, and I want to talk about it. So, we're back in the Seven Kingdoms, and consider me transported there because this episode was incredible. Before I get into story details, I want to give props to the production designers of the show, who I think really need a lot more love because, holy crap, this entire episode takes place in Winterfell, and I think it definitely goes unrecognized that so much of this is practical. I mean, those are real sets. Of course, they're not real stone buildings or whatever, castles, but oh my god, like, there is not that much green screen. All of the weapons are real, just the attention to detail is insane. And I don't know, Game of Thrones, with its $10 million per episode budget, is really putting a lot of mainstream blockbuster movies to shame with just what it could do with that amount of money, and just do so many things practically. Not that many visual effects, and it's incredible work, and it needs recognition. But anyway, let's jump into the plot. So we have Jaime Lannister arriving in Winterfell, and that's, similar to how Daenerys arrived in Winterfell. There was some tension. There's some tension with this dude. I mean, just, a couple episodes ago in Season 7, he was still head over heels with Cersei, who could be described as a mad queen. The North does not trust her at all, and so, guilty by association, Jaime, we're not so keen on you. And Daenerys is also like, yeah, I'm not so sure about the guy who killed my father, basically. She's trying to distance herself from her lineage, but at the same time, she's hell-bent on this path to take the Iron Throne and sort of get back at people for, sort of destroying her entire family, warranted or not. They were humiliated, and now she just wants to take back the Iron Throne, and she's power-hungry. And, yeah, but, back to Jaime. We also have him interacting with Brandon Stark, and, saying, yeah, sorry, I pushed you out a window, 9 years ago, but don't keep a grudge, and he pretty much doesn't, which is expected, because, he became the Three-Eyed Raven. That's what he wanted. He can see everything. He just doesn't have time for things like that. He actually very much reminds me of Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. He's, he just is not that, he's not focused on humanity anymore, so it doesn't matter. But he also drops some wisdom, and he's like, I wouldn't be Brandon Stark, you wouldn't be Jaime Lannister. And I think that really brings forth just how much these characters have changed since we first saw them. Game of Thrones writing is very natural, because all of this character progression, it doesn't even quite dawn on you until you've reached this point, and you're like, wow, yeah, you are very different from when we first saw you. I just think that's great that, it doesn't even have to be noticed. It's just written in such a clever way that you notice it later, and you're like, alright, that is a very solid character. But before, you were just really enjoying them in the moment. And yeah, Jaime's character is handled very well here. I was speaking about Daenerys. I think they're very much leaning towards she's going to become the next Mad Queen. She tries to, get through to Sansa saying, I love Jon, you love Jon, we have something going on here. You should trust me a bit more. But, Sansa is kind of into it, and then snaps out of it and is like, what about Winterfell? I gotta protect my people. What are you gonna do? And Daenerys is silent because, admittedly, it's a little selfish. She's power hungry, basically. So, and I think that's made even more clear by when Jon reveals to Daenerys that they are both Targaryens. She's like, then that would make you the male heir to the Iron Throne. And just Emilia Clarke's subtle performance here, some people might not notice it, but for me, it really stuck out as she's like, yeah, I might have to take you out. So it's going to be very fascinating to see who ends up on the Iron Throne. I'm not sure how they're going to manage that. What with all this White Walker chaos that, is set up at the end of this episode, usual cliffhanger ending. But I'm thinking either Jon, Daenerys, or the Night King. I would love for it to be Jon because I think he's earned it, but I don't know. Speaking of earning things, we have Brienne of Tarth finally getting knighted, which is long overdue because she is, a lot of Game of Thrones characters. I said earlier today that people would probably be more forgiving. And speaking of earning things, we have Brienne of Tarth finally getting knighted. It was long overdue. She absolutely deserves it in a show that is populated by a lot of very, very complex, there's not a lot of moral compass. We have a character, and that's not to her disservice at all, who very clearly has, some morals that she sticks to. Sometimes, a little too much. She's not completely unflawed, but, she's been underappreciated just because of her gender. She couldn't be knighted, and I think it best represents this episode and why it's the title that we just have this moment of, something that maybe doesn't mean much in a literal sense, but means so much to the audience just looking at these characters and saying, this finally happened. A lot of payoffs in this one. And also in sort of the same scene, we have Tormund talking about how he grew strong drinking giant's milk. The whole point of this episode is sort of characters, sitting down together and deciding how they're going to spend maybe their last hours on the planet before, the White Walkers kill everybody. And even with that morbid sort of looming threat, we just have Tormund being a total uncomfortable, kind of creepy, crushing on Brienne goofball. And I don't know what sums up this episode best than that moment. The writers are able to have a lot of fun reuniting characters, bringing characters together after a long time, maybe, meeting characters who have never met, and bringing characters who've known each other for a very long time, but facing this cause together. And I just think so much of the writing in this episode is incredible. Just people sitting down and talking. It's intimate, it's tender, and I very, very much love it. And Podrick looks very different, I gotta say. He is much more rugged than he used to be, and great singing, man. Great singing. That's my biggest takeaway. Podrick looks nicer, and I didn't know he could sing. But finally, I want to talk about Arya in this episode, who has always been one of my favorite characters, because she's gone through a lot. She was pretending to be a male for a very long time, and, we sort of have Gendry coming back from that era, and, Gendry hasn't known Arya for too long. He hasn't seen her in quite a while, and she's changed. In the last few seasons, we've really seen her being so in the murder phase, I guess, of adolescence. I mean, you have a time in your life where you want to murder kings, queens, you know, various leaders and such. And, you know, she was going through a lot. And in this episode, she's like, you know what? I want to spend my last hours on life with you, Gendry. And I thought that was pretty beautiful. There was a nice post on Twitter thread, you know, basically saying this is the most normal thing Arya's done, so you shouldn't be complaining about this. It's perfectly normal for someone of her age. Let's not forget she is 20 years old. She started as like 11 or 12, but she is 20 now. She is a full-grown woman, and so that was, you know, an empowering scene. It didn't feel exploitative at all. All right, we're gonna end there. Hopefully you enjoyed my video. I know it's sort of rambly, but I really just wanted to get my thoughts on this episode because I haven't been passionate about an episode of television in a very long time, and this was very top of the line work. So I am on this journey, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. I think the next episode is going to be an hour and 30-minute long battle, so that's going to be a weird change of pace from this, but hopefully it's good. Hopefully it also has some character mixed into there with the awesome fight choreography. But for now, I just have this amazing episode to cherish. I will always have that. So yeah, leave a like if you enjoyed this, subscribe, and ring the bell if you want to check out the rest of my content for some reason. And as always, I will see you next video.